Hi guys, this is my first video and I'm super duper excited, but I'm also a little bit nervous. As you can tell by the title, this video is about how to get a grade 9 on your maths GCSE. So I specifically did the IN GCSE math course. However, I'm sure that the advice that I provide in this video will be helpful for other courses. Okay, so just a little introduction about me, my background in math, and obviously the score that I got on my math GCSE. So I sat my paper in November 2023. This is quite unusual as most people sit their exams in the November series, which means that I had overall a lot less time to prepare, and honestly it was just like a really anxiety-inducing experience for me. But you know, everyone else, you've got about 2-ish months to, when I upload this, a month and a half to prepare for your GCSE, so don't worry. So now the most important bit, my paper. So I scored 175 out of 200 on my paper, which is roughly 76 per paper. And the grade boundaries for a 9 were 152 out of 200, which is kind of average. However, it can range from 140 to 160. However, 160 is the maximum, which means that you'll have to score at least 80 marks on each paper out of 100. I sat this paper with around 6 or 7 other students, and we all achieved 9s, ranging from 160 to 190. So in this video, I'll be outlining the exact steps that we took as a group for all of us to achieve our 9s. So now, the exam structure. This is going to be extremely specific to the edXL IGCSE, I think Math B papers. So you can skip this section if that's not the course that you're taking. Each paper is 100 marks and you have 2 hours or 120 minutes to complete each paper, which means around about a mark per minute, excluding the time that you need to check over your work. And I know that sounds extremely difficult, but don't let that sort of idea hold you down, because there are questions that you're just gonna like fly through, and there's gonna be questions that are gonna take a little bit longer. The first 16 to 17 questions are the easiest on the paper, and they're mostly questions that have been like repeated and recycled in past papers, and this is exactly where you must learn how to get the most marks, because the last 5, 6, 7 questions are going to be the most difficult and worth the most marks, and it's much harder to prepare for those. So I highly recommend preparing for the first 16 to 17 questions. Now I would like to tell you about some topics that most commonly come up in the exams. So there's vectors, they usually come up, histograms, conditional probability and unconditional probability, trigonometry, simultaneous equations, whether that be linear or quadratic, algebraic proofs, and quadratics are the most likely topics to come up. Okay, now I'm going to tell you how I organized my time and prepared for the GCSE. Look, I've got to be real, I did not have a set study schedule where I came home and I was like, okay, today I'm going to study this and I'm going to study that for this amount of time, and then I'm going to have this amount of break. And this was because my math GCSE were the weeks following my first mocks. My exam was on November 8th and my mocks finished November 1st. So I had to balance between all of my other GCSE mocks and my real math GCSE, which is exactly what happens in the real GCSE. So one thing that I found really helpful in balancing math with every other subject that I took was to practice math in every free time that I had. This sounds really extreme, but honestly it's not. Like I would allocate time to study for my other subjects, but if I was if my mom was driving me home, I would do math in the car. If I had free time in between lessons, I would do math there. It would just be like a question or two, but that I think is really what pushed me up to that grade 9. Honestly, I did so much math to the point where I started dreaming about it. I started dreaming about my GCSE papers. Obviously, don't do it to that extreme. I suggest doing at least maybe between 3 to 5 questions every single day, just so you can keep your mind sharp and always kind of, you know, focused on math. One thing that I really want to stress is that math is not topic-based. It's not something that you study in units or in chapters. It's practice-based. The only way that you can get better is by constant practice. It's not something that you can revise for the day before. Okay, Now I'm going to talk about some specific resources. The first one that I suggest is Save My Exams. It is an absolute godsend. It has past papers, it has specific topic notes, it has specific topic questions, it has detailed explanations of how to get to each answer, it has mark schemes, it has everything. However, it is a paid service, but honestly it's worth it because it has every GCSE option on it, it has every single A-level option, it has IB, it even has the American program. So honestly, I think it is the #1 investment you can make towards your GCSEs and even beyond that. If you're a bit reluctant to pay, you can borrow a friend, because that's what I did during my GCSE. I've bought it now, but you can borrow it from a friend. Honestly, just splurge. It's about $60 for a whole year, and it's so worth it. But if you really can't spend that kind of money, here are some free resources that I used as well. I suggest using Khan Academy. It's really good for reinforcing some basic concepts like quadratic, simplifying, algebraic proofs. Another one that I suggest is Corbett Math, because it has specific questions for specific topics with video answers and explanations alongside them. It really makes sure that you are able to understand the question fully through and through. Similarly, Physics and Maths Tutor is amazing. It has specific topic worksheets, so you can just, practice at a specific topic till, you've got it. Okay, this is about how I manage my time effectively while studying for my Maths GCSE. I made sure not to deprive myself of happiness, because if I was unhappy, if I was extremely stressed, if I was just extremely anxious, I knew I wouldn't be able to study properly for my Maths GCSE. So I continued going to the gym, I continued going to my Taekwondo classes, just not as usual. I used to go around 2-3 times a week. I just put that down to once a week. I also went out with my friends. Before the Maths GCSE, I used to go out with them like maybe 2-3 times a weekend, but I took that down to once every 2 weeks. I went on walks, I went on runs, I talked to my family, I went out to watch movies with them. Just make sure that you're not being antisocial and cooped up in your house while studying for your Maths GCSE or honestly any other GCSE, as this is the #1 thing that can lower your grades, increase stress, and just overall not help you reach those target grades. Okay, here are some study techniques that I used to get my 9 in my Maths GCSE. The first one is I would constantly be changing my location. Every time that I would start to feel bored of a place, I would move. I went from libraries to cafes to different places around my house. It honestly just kept my mind fresh and alert. You have to avoid monotony, you have to avoid keeping a set schedule, as this is something that can prevent you from getting target grades. Next, I would like to stress how important it is to understand basic concepts rather than memorizing different formulas. It is extremely important to understand the basics of a topic, because you will be asked to link different parts of math together in questions. For example, the last question of a paper, it could be algebraic proofs. However, you may have to use indices rule, or you would have to use different formulas. Maybe you'd have to differentiate. So it is extremely important to have a clear understanding of basic topics, as this will allow you to maximize your marks. Okay, this is my specific step-by-step guide that I used to solve almost every single question that came up in my paper. First, I would highlight important information. You may think that's a waste of time, but if you misread a question, you will be denying yourself of any and all points that you can receive in that question. So I would highlight important information, like important numbers, important figures. Like if they asked me to round to a specific amount of decimal places, I would highlight that. Second, I would figure out exactly what the question wants from me. Do they want me to find x? Do they want me to rearrange an equation? Do they want proof for something? I would make sure that I knew exactly what the question was asking me. Third, I would finally begin to solve. I would write down every step of my working. If I needed to, I would label what I was doing. For example, if I was solving a graphs question, I'd say, okay, finding the equation of line this, finding the gradient of line this. I would make sure that it was step by step and methodical. Then I would move on to another question and follow the similar process. Then at the end of the paper, I would cover up my previous workings. I would ask for an extra piece of paper from the invigilator, and I would cover up my previous working and completely redo the paper. This would make sure that I had not made any stupid mistakes, and honestly, it definitely saved me at least 5 or 6 marks on an extremely difficult vectors question that came up on my paper. Next, I would like to talk about the importance of having a positive mindset before, after, and during your exam. Honestly, you have to stay positive. You cannot let yourself fall into a negative downward spiral, as this will not allow you to perform your best in an exam. To do this and to stay positive, what I specifically did is that I had a group chat with everyone else who was taking the Maths GCSE with me at the same time. This was extremely helpful as we would send each other the problems that we were stuck on, we would offer support, we would be encouraging, and we'd make the situation seem better than it actually was. We made each other feel better about the exam, which grew my confidence and everyone else's confidence. In short, all I'm saying is maintain your friendships and surround yourself with like-minded people. If you surround yourself with people who don't really care about their GCSEs, who spend all their time going out and just wasting time, not studying at all, you're gonna end up copying their behavior and not putting in work and time and effort into your own studies. Rather, surround yourself with people who want to do well, who want to achieve a lot. This allows you to be more motivated and allow you to maximize your marks for any GCSE. Now, it's D-Day. These are some tips for your exam day. Of course, sleep early. I tried to sleep as early as possible. I think I got into bed around 7 or 8 p.m. But obviously, I was super duper scared. I didn't end up sleeping that early. But in order to combat, those jitters that you get, what I did was I went for a run, a really long, tiring run, and I took a hot shower in order to tire myself out, which allowed me to get a full night's rest and proper, good quality sleep. Sleep is so important before your exam, because if you're tired, your brain is not working at its maximum capacity. On the day I ate a good breakfast. It is extremely important to have healthy food during your study periods rather than munching on junk, because this just limits your productivity, and overall it's just unhealthy for you. So specifically what I ate on the day was I had a banana and I had oatmeal, which are carbs that release energy slowly, which allowed me to stay energized throughout my exam. Now, this is my #1 top tip for Math GCSE. It is the reason that I got my 9. And it's gonna sound extremely controversial, but do not do any math for 12 hours, at least 12 hours before your exam. Okay, I know what you're thinking. You're gonna think it sounds stupid, or you should get as much practice in as possible. Well, that might be true for some other subjects. Studying too much math, yes, it's possible to study too much math, but if you study too much math, you get mathed out. Okay, that's what I call it. You get mathed out, where your brain is so overloaded and tired from doing hard math that it makes mistakes, silly mistakes that can cost you those vital marks in an exam. You doing too much math can make you lose maybe 2 or 3 marks. Trust me, the 2 or 3 marks that you save by not doing math continuously the day before might be what gets you from an 8 to a 9, or 6 to a 7, or even a 3 to a 4, or 4 to a 5. So please trust me when I say that not doing math 12 hours before your exam is exactly what you need to achieve the most that you can. Now, I'd like to discuss time management in your exams. So, since you've practiced so much for your exam, you will see that it takes less and less time for you to complete your paper. I used to barely be able to finish my entire paper in 2 hours. Sometimes I wouldn't even finish. But over about a month-ish, I was able to finish a paper and score 80 marks in less than an hour. But trust me when I say that practice makes perfect, and the more that you practice, the faster your time gets, and that allows you to have more time to redo and recheck your paper. Now, please don't be one of those people who, when they finish the paper, they close it and they put their head down and they go to sleep in the exam hall. That might be fine for mocks, but that is not fine for your GCSE. These are your final exams, okay? So if you have any time left over, what I suggest you do is, as I've said before, you put a spare paper over your working and you completely redo the paper in order to make sure that you haven't made any silly mistakes. Lastly, results day. You finish your paper and it's all come back to you. This is how you're supposed to react, okay? You're supposed to react in a calm, collected manner and move on with your life. But honestly, that's not what I did. I was freaking out. I got my results kind of in between my second mock series, so I was already stressed, okay? Me and my friend were waiting in school for our results, and we spent at least 2 hours just stressing and praying and going crazy about them. So that's normal. Don't feel upset about that. But when I finally got my results in a little white envelope, I took them, ran into an empty classroom, and opened them just to myself. And I was reading it, and I was so relieved because I honestly thought that I did terrible and that I was gonna have to redo my maths GCSE. But I was so relieved when I saw my grade. But if there's one thing I could tell my past self, is to practice more of the easier topics. Like, I know I lost some marks on some silly mistakes like bearings. Like, I just completely blanked and I forgot how to do them. And honestly, that's all the tips that I have for you today. Please feel free to ask questions or share your own experiences in the comments below if you've done your GCSE or if you're going to do your GCSE. You can email me on Instagram at StudySphereBlogs, or you can email me. I'll keep my email down below. If you have any problems with any questions, you can send them to me, and I will send you a video with a live explanation of me explaining how to solve it. I really hope you found this video useful and helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.